Hello, this is John Jughead Pierson in Japan. I'm starting this, hopefully, starting this YouTube series that was inspired by an idea by Sarah Ramon, a friend of mine, who was watching my Periscope um, uploads, and she thought it was a good idea to do a rating system of the Weasel records that I'd been on. She said it had been done by one of the Ramones. I'm not sure which one did it, Joey or Johnny or Dee Dee, um, one of those three, and that she thought I should give it a go. Uh, and I and I may or may not do that, but I was more inspired this to do a longer form thing on actually just reviewing all of the records I've ever played on in chronological order. I think there's something like 20 of them, and I'm going to go through Weasel, Mopes, um, and definitely Even In Blackouts. I don't know if I'll go into the ones where I played guest guitar on, but that's my plan, is to go through all those records. The idea is that I'm going to listen to it once beforehand, each record, but I'm not going to really think about what I'm going to say live. I just kind of want it to be a little bit more spontaneous, and also know that my memory is often really bad, so I might get a lot of things wrong, and maybe in the comments later I'll actually try to correct some of that, if I feel it necessary. Any other thing I want to say? I think that's it. I think, well, what I'm going to do too is, since Wikipedia seems to have like a plethora of material on us, and maybe even on each record, so I'm going to probably start each one by going through what I find on here. So the first record that I played on was in Screeching Weasel, and it was the self-titled record that was put out in September of 1987. According to here, it was recorded in June 13th, 1987 at Solid Sound Studio in Hoffman Estates, Illinois. And it was engineered and produced by Screeching Weasel. We did it ourselves, me and Ben mostly, and it was engineered and co-produced by Phil Bonet, who was an employee at Solid Sound Studios. So let's go. Let's start reading this, what it says about this record, and then I will fill in some stuff as we go along. Screeching Weasel is the self-titled debut studio album by the Chicago-based punk rock band Screeching Weasel. All true. It was originally released on vinyl with a limited pressing of 1,000 copies in September of 1987 through the local independent label Underdog Records. Underdog Records was run by Russ Forster, who we had played a show with at a place called Batteries Not Included, which I think was in Lincoln Park before we lived in the city. We were suburban boys. It was an over 21 club that was booked by the singer from Material Issue, who is sadly dead right now. Um, he did a pretty good job for a while there. And so that's where we met Russ, and he was in his band called Fudge Tunnel at the time, and had this label that put out records. You basically would pay for your own recording of the record, then he would pay for the pressing. Um, and it goes on to say the album was released in the United Kingdom by What Goes On Records, who screwed us, with a pressing of 2,000 copies. It was the band's only album with bassist Vinny Bovine, very true. Vinny Bovine, or Vinny Vogel, was a friend of mine originally. I don't know if I technically went to school with him. He was a year younger than me. Um, I went to the same schools, but we didn't go together. I met him because I dated this girl, Susan, who was his neighbor. So she used to hang out with him, and that's where I met him. And he was also a friend with David Robinson, who wrote some songs on this record. So somewhere in there, he became our bass player, because me and Ben had gotten together first and then compiled the rest of the band. Um, Vinny Bovine, who was fired the next year due to tensions within the band. Yes, he was always a little on the edge, and he had started working with another band friend of ours, um, named Glenn Herman, and his band Impulse Manslaughter. That's right. which we thought, me and Ben always thought, suited him better because he liked a little bit more of the harder metal. But he broke up with his girlfriend, who was also a friend of ours, Anne, and he started acting really strange. And on stage, he started putting nails in his shoes, so the nails were like sticking out of his shoes, and I wore like bare, uh, uh, furry slippers at the time, so I could have stepped on those. I think I might have stepped on one, so we were upset about that. And then he eventually, at a show at Dirty Nelly's, he was really aggressive and he swung his bass at the audience, trying to hit his ex-girlfriend Anne, um, and accidentally hits Warren Fish from the band Ozfish right in the face. The irony is that Warren would be our next bass player in the band, taking place of Vinny. So Vinny hit with his bass the man who would eventually take his place in the band. It goes on here to say, let's see, Screeching Weasel, the record, documents the band's early years as a hardcore punk band, with the music being heavily influenced by bands such as Adrenaline OD, Anger Samoans, Circle Jerks, and Black Flag. I would agree to all of that. Those are yeah, really strong influences on us. I would add that maybe the Ramones, although they sort of became, we were listening to them then, but I think they became more of an influence on the band a little bit later. But Ben and I used to listen to the Ramones live album quite a bit. Um, Ben was more of a fan of Black Flag. I didn't really care for Black Flag much. But my memory about Ben and Black Flag is that Ben and I worked at the movie theater together. That's where we rejoined as friends. We were originally on a wrestling team together in junior high, and then we met up again when I was maybe just graduating high school, and he was a senior somewhere. He might have dropped out of school. Um, but we worked at the movie theater, and each employee, mostly the men, the doorman, once a week had to go up into this little teeny room upstairs of the theater and pop popcorn. There's like a little room that was just wall to wall bags of popcorn. So you had to stay up there for your 6 hour shift, and butter and oil would get all over you. It was actually, I really enjoyed being up there. Um, and you just filled duffel bags full of popcorn. But the cool thing was that you could just play your own music, whatever you wanted to listen to. So Ben would often play Black Flag, and I would go up there before or after work in my blue tuxedo doorman outfit and just sit there and listen to music with him. And then this goes on to say the album gained the band a minor local following, and its initial pressing sold out quickly. I guess that's true. I don't remember if it sold out or we just lost a bunch. However, Underdog decided not to repress the album to save money for another release. Yeah, Russ was really into sort of just putting things out there and then and not supporting them much anymore. I think that was just kind of his system. I think we were a little bit pissed, upset at it since it was doing well, but ultimately it wasn't a big deal. Screeching Weasel was out of print for the next decade until VML Records released it. VML was run by Joe Vindictive from the Vindictives. It was released on CD in 1997. I think Ben never really wanted this out again. He would be happy if it just disappeared from the face of the earth, but I kind of think it's a little bit charming of a record. It's really messy, but I actually, a lot of the influences I was playing, my metal influences, I think, beyond the bands listed here, punk bands, really sort of show up as I was listening to it. I heard like, oh, that's Judas Priest. Oh, that's Queen. So I think I like a lot of the influences that I had going on that I was playing on guitar on that record. Um, the CD version featured a full color version of the album art and several previously unreleased bonus tracks. The art was done by Paul Russell, has done a lot of Screeching Weasel art. He designed, of course, the Weasel, the original Weasel logo, and he designed this cover. This was the first thing he did for us. I think he might have done the demo too. It looks very different art. It's a weasel. It's a really rough drawing of a weasel. I don't know if Paul did that. He might have. He was one of my good friends, and he was a great artist. So I brought him in to do stuff for us. And originally, our logo was the cow, because Ben wrote a song about cows, about tipping cows and stuff like that. And So that became our. We thought it'd be funny. We all thought it was funny, and it might have been my idea that we were called Screeching Weasel and our logo would be a cow. That seemed like my kind of humor. Um, so that was originally our. So Paul basically took a lot of ideas from the songs and did the cover. You know, the 7-Eleven is there, the Norman Bates and his mother, the cow, the hardcore hippie, the jock punk. There's a little teeny weasel by our feet. The funny thing about the cover is that when we designed it, you had to do color separation back then because there was no, there was no digital. So we had Paul's drawing, black and white drawing, and then we put a sort of what do they call it? Uh, Not cellophane, the acetate over it, a clear piece of plastic. And they told us to marker in where we wanted, it to be colored. So we wanted it to be a red sky. I think, for death coming because the cow is in the air and he's coming to kill us all. So it was going to be a red sky. So we markered in. I markered in. I think around the letters and on this sort of this clear plastic to represent where the solid red should be. And when we got the albums back, they actually took our markered, coloring as the actual art for the cover instead of it being a solid red. I remember us being very pissed about that, but what were you going to do? You didn't really return them back then. We were new. We didn't know what we were doing as much. Um, so that is that. The band was formed as all night garage sale, true, and we used to record in Ben's basement. Record? No, we used to rehearse. We started in his garage, and we moved to his basement, and then we moved to my garage, and then eventually we moved to Panic's place in the west suburbs, and then eventually to my place, my basement in the city when we moved into the city. So let's get into the record here. So I didn't really have a lot to say about this early one. Maybe more things will come to me as I go through this. Um, yes, the first song on the record is "Say No to Authority," and no, I don't have anything to say about it, except that like a lot of the songs on here, we were really sort of hitting the very sort of cliche ideas of punk, and being against authority. So that, I mean, a lot of the songs are just really about that, about sort of very cynical and like the next one is "Wanna Die," also lyrics by Weasel, music by Screeching Weasel. I think we worked on a lot of the songs together. I was trying to remember how we did it, but because it became so natural for Ben to write his own music and then to bring it in and then us to fill in our parts. But in the beginning, we used to sit there with his lyrics and really just come up with music together often. Or sometimes I would just play a riff or something I had, and then he would sort of create lyrics right there on top of it. So "Wanna Die" has that really sort of darker edge to it that I kind of like. A lot of those older punk bands have those darker tones, like almost like the Iggy Pop "Looking for a Man with a Microscope" from the Repo Man soundtrack. Has sort of a darker feel to it, the chord progression. Number three on there is "Society," of course, just against society, another punk rock thing. I can't remember the music as much on that one. I think it has a really cool drum part that kicks in at the beginning of it. Steve wasn't a very good drummer, but he knew punk rock, so he had a lot of the cliche drummer things that really sort of worked on this record. Um, the production of it is horrible sounding. It's so echoey. I don't really like it. Oh yeah, I was going to say a little bit about that, about Phil Bonet. When we recorded actually our demo and then the record, which had a lot of the similar songs, and then maybe even Boogada, we couldn't afford really the regular time at Hoffman Estates Solid Sound Studio. So there were these rates where you would come in after hours overnight and they would charge you a lot less. And Phil Bonet was sort of in charge of those things. So the first night we showed up, all excited to record, and this might have been the demo. Okay, it might have been the first time, and he never showed up. Phil Benet forgot. He was kind of like that. Um, but then he showed up, and then he became I don't know. We really became really close with Phil, because we spent a lot of nights with him. Of me on Coca Cola. I mean Coca Cola, caffeine, and Ben drinking a lot of coffee. He always drank a lot of coffee. So we'd work jobs all day to support the band, and then we'd stay up all night and record this record. I think we did it in 1 or 2 nights. Bogota and this one were all done. I think maybe one night. I think Bogota we maybe have gone back the next night to produce it or to mix it, but I think this first record we just did it all in one night. So we're back to California. California sucks. I think Ben was reading MR&R back then, and it definitely because when we were all night garage sale, we posted his song "I Hate Old Folks," and it got some sort of people were responding back to us angrily. But how could we hate old folks? So I think he sort of liked that, and Tim Yohannan, who ran the magazine, I think kind of liked that we were causing a little controversy. So I think Ben worked on a song called "California Sucks" in response to you know maximum rock and roll being out of California. The next one is "Murder in the Brady House," which really got attracted the attention of I think Joe from the Queers actually says that was one of the ones that inspired him to start playing again and being more excited about music. And that, of course, is we're suburban punks, and a lot of the songs in the beginning days were about you used to watch a lot of TV, so that's of course about the Brady Bunch. That song was actually played by John Peels in Britain. That's how we got that record deal there. Um, I didn't had never heard of before John Peels before this but then once I heard his name, I looked him up and discovered that he had a connection with Bauhaus, who I was a really big fan of. Like Bauhaus recorded a live John Peel session, so that was a pretty big deal for me. Um, when I found out, was no longer working at the movie theater. He got a job down the street. The movie theater was in Rancher Cinema in Mount Prospect, and he got an all nights job at the gas station in Prospect Heights, where he's from, right across from our Peel box. Um, and after work at midnight, I would walk over to visit him for a couple hours and have some free soda pop and maybe a candy bar. And that's where I remember specifically hearing about John Peel playing it. I don't know if Ben got a call someone sent us mail because there was no internet, email. So I don't know how we found out that he played it, but that's that. Number 6 is "I Can't Stand Myself." All I can say about that is, once again, it's a very typical punk rock in those days of writing songs that are very self-deprecating, and that I think is a sort of venue that Ben would nurture and use to a very more sophisticated degree, like in songs "Every Night." Later, more of sort of a analyzing of the self-doubt and the self-loathing that one can have about themselves. The next song, "My Song," I remember when we were in Ben's basement and he brought the song in. I thought it was something different for us. I thought it seemed kind of important. Um, I really like the melody of it. It has little whispers of the more melodic songs he would be writing later, and also had sort of a serious relationship tone to it. I always really liked that song. Um, then we did "High Ambitions," which I think is some of Ben's funniest lyrics. "I want God to make my bed." It's super funny. Me and Vinny wrote the music for that. That sort of has my metal sort of Randy Rhoads from Ozzy Osbourne band influences on on the guitar, but it also has a little bit more of the thrashy metal sound, which is probably Vinny's influence. So it's basically my uh, metal influences with his thrash metal influences. Then we have number 9, "March of the Lawnmowers." I remember one thing I remember about this is me and Ben were in his bedroom. I used to go over there a lot. We used to watch TV, and then we'd hang out in his bedroom, and he'd play guitar or bass, whatever we had laying around. And I remember him doing this weird jaunty doo 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 doo, and so we sort of both pieced together this weird sound that had sort of a black flag feel to it. And I think he was just sort of made up the lyrics as we were playing this stupid thing. So that song was really spontaneous, and I remember specifically it all sort of coming together in his bedroom while we were probably waiting for Steve to show up because he came all the way from Wisconsin. So I would get there earlier, and I think maybe Ben would pick me up because he had a car and I didn't, and we'd practice songs. Then there's Leave Me Alone. I really like the music. I wrote the music for that one, and I remember being pretty proud of the music for that. I don't know. The whole record is simple and goofy as all get go, but I do remember moments of being proud of songs, and that was one of the ones. Uh, Number 11 is Don't Touch My Car, which is a really stupid song and one of the only lyrics that I've ever wrote for the band. Um, I just wasn't a very good lyricist at the time. I didn't know what to write about, and everything felt really cliche. That was probably my problem. I was too aware of things being too cliche. But that one, of course, was my take on, jocks, because we had a big thing against jocks in general on this record. Um, about don't touch my car, man. So that's what it is. But the fun thing about that song is that me and Ben sang it together, and Phil had set up a mic stand with two mics on the opposite end. So we actually faced each other, looking at each other as we were doing that whole spiel during the song and while we were singing it. And I remember cracking up. It's one of my favorite memories of that record is us in there just singing those stupid, stupid lyrics. Next one is 7-Eleven, which of course, Ben worked at the gas station, and there was a 7-Eleven right across the street, so he was always seeing that. So he probably wrote those lyrics while he was, staring over at the 7-Eleven. It's also a very suburban thing too, and that feel of that song would later be, I think, used on later records like "Surfing in Wilmette." Sort of has that same feel as this song. So he would perfect it a little bit more. Then number 13 is Cows, which is I know is one of the songs that Ben brought in that he had written with a friend of his that they used to write songs together when they were in rehab together in Maine. So Ben would occasionally bring in one of those songs, like "I Hate Old Folks" was one of those, and "Cows" was one of those. He would just talk about how him and his friend, I don't know if he ever told me his name, but they used to listen to Black Flag all the time and write really stupid lyrics. So "Cows" was from that slew of songs. And then we're on side Moo. So there's side one and then side Moo for the cow theme, of course, for our logo at the time. The first song is Work, and that was also on our demo tape. Um, of course, punks once again write songs about working, and me and Ben worked a lot, because we were trying to keep the band afloat. So, and we were the two putting in all the money. So, of course, we had a song about work. And what's interesting about that one is that I think, no, we definitely, the demo one has it all being fast, but I think I started playing it slow for fun, and then Ben started saying the lyrics as if he was bored, like at work, and we kind of liked it. So um, it has a slow beginning, and then it kicks into the hardcore part of it. Um, Number 15 is Wavin' Gerbs, and that was lyrics by David Robinson, a really stupid song. But it was music by Vinny. Maybe those two had written it together before the band too. That's possible. But Dave is a good friend of mine, and there's a lot of close friends I had around at that time who were just helping out with the band, whether it's Paul or Dave Robinson or my friend Omar used to help us out a lot too with I don't know, food and stuff like that. So he wrote that one, and that was one of the only songs that was not written by us completely at all that we would do until Ben started writing with Joe Queer and stuff like that. 16 is Liar. That's the fastest song on the record. I remember that. I don't know who, there was a specific person that Ben was talking about being a liar, and I do not remember who it was. Number 17 is OMW, which is a cover of Oscar Mayer Wiener, which was something that our drummer Steve Cheese wanted to do. And at the time, we didn't really have a structure for actually who was going to be the singer or lyricist or whatever. We all just brought stuff in, but as you can, even from the beginning, you can see it was moving in the territory of Ben being the singer, of course, and writing most of the songs, and me also. But back then, uh, Steve wanted to do Oscar Mayer Wiener, so I think Ben figured out the chords underneath it, and that's Steve singing that. Um, and then there's Clean Cut Asshole, which is another, jock hating thing. But I wrote the music for that one. I really like the music for that one. I don't have much more to say about it. Raining Needles, which another one was another lyrics written by David Robinson, and Ben wrote the music for that. Really fast music. That one is very Angry Samoans like, and it would actually appeared on a EP, like a 7-inch with a band called Moving Targets on one side and us on the other. I remember being really excited that we were actually put on someone else's record. It was kind of a neat thing that they were using our song for this EP. Um, and then BPD is the next song. That was lyrics by Weasel, music by me. That was another one I was really proud of. I was really trying to learn that rock and roll, rhythm thing going, and I was never very good at it. But I really like the progression of this one, and then I'm horrible at solos. I just don't really like solos much. But that one was one of the first ones that I started playing with, and it has a little sort of melodic feel to it. But we haven't yet really hit on to the melodies of like "Hey Suburbia," which come up in the next record. I don't think we have any strong sort of melodic solos on this first record. The next one is "Experiencing Ozfish," of course, which is about our friend Warren in his band Ozfish, which was just a guitarist and a drummer. They used to play all the time with us at Dirty Nelly's, and they were really stupid, funny, and messy as hell, and you couldn't understand what they were saying, but they were really funny. The drummer would play this really beat up, almost like a children's drum set, and Warren would just wail on the guitar. And since he wasn't really didn't have to stay in tune with anybody else. He used to just not really be in tune and sing out of key, and it would drive everyone out of the room, and we loved it. Um, then there's Jock Punk, which I really has a jaunty sort of guitar part that I wrote for that I really like. That used to be a kind of a big hit for us in the day, in the early days, a Jock Punk song. Kmart Blues is the next one. That's number 23. That was lyrics by Steve. He used to work at a Kmart, and he would show up on weekends. I think he saw an ad for the band, and we accepted his proposal to be in the band, even though he lived in Wisconsin. So he used to travel like an hour and a half to come play in the band, and he worked at the Kmart. So that song is him over the intercom, and then Ben is singing the lyrics to the song. Um, then there's Bates Motel. Ben was just a big fan of that, and the music is by me, and that is might be my favorite music on this, and I think it's the best play that I did out of all the songs, and that was pretty much stolen from "Death on Two Legs" by Queen. Brian May is one of my favorite guitarists, and I always wanted to play like him. So it has that sort of feel of what Brian May would play on that record, "Day at the Races." Number 27 is "Hardcore Hippie," which is another slam at just different types of social uh, groups of people that we just didn't really like, and that was the hippies that would show up to hardcore shows, or the punks that would act like hippies, and we didn't really care for them. The cool thing about this though is this is the first reference to the number 27. I remember that we had a conversation about how we thought the number 27 was pretty funny. So that's why that was chosen for that song. Then it became many other things later, but that's the first time it was used, was in that song. Uh, and I think it might have something to do with it. It rhythmically works. It has 4 syllables, which it's almost no other number I think has that 4 syllables. Uh, so I think it has a good rhythm to it too, and it's just something funny about it for some reason. Then we have "What Is Right," which at the time I thought that was a rockin' song, and Ben really does a really great job with that one. That just gets out of control at the end, yelling "fuck," and I really it was probably the best I could play rock at the time. So I was pretty proud of that song. I remember even that solo at the end. I really liked it so much that it's sadly it's fake on the record about me saying, "What is that? It?" But that was sort of the feel when I played it. When I played it in the studio, I just sort of got into the solo and then forgot the song was ending and kept playing. And we thought that was funny, so we went back and tried to record me saying, record me doing the fuck up. But really, the guitar part is me fucking up and playing too long. But the me speaking about it is made up afterwards. And then we ended with "Yeah Baby," which is an acoustic song that I used to play a lot. I think Ben just overheard me playing it all the time. It was taken from a Feelies song. Feelies are one of my favorite bands from New Jersey, and I was just playing that G D C sort of progression, and Ben started singing the "Yeah Baby" lyrics, which "Yeah Baby" is a phrase from a DJ radio personality, Jonathan Brandmeier. He used to say "Yeah Baby" all the time, and yeah, actually, and Jonathan Brandmeier would actually use later discovered our song "I Hate Led Zeppelin" and would use it as one of his things that he would play every once in a while. He had it like on one of those. I don't know what they call them. The DJs had these little loops of sound bites that they would play, and that was one of them. So that was pretty cool. Um, so that's the first record. 27 songs. We actually added that last song, "Yeah Baby," because we wanted it to have 27 songs. We also did that for Bogota too. Um, so that is that. That is how the number 27 started, and that was the first record, and how we became a band. Um, and that ran 34 minutes and 12 seconds, that first record, 27 songs. Thank you. This is John signing off from Japan. Now I'm going to go get some sleep.